Welcome to the Travelman Podcast. I'm your host, Ben, and if you're joining me for the first time, then I say hello and thank you. And if you're a returning listener, then I say thanks for listening. On today's amazing episode, I'll be talking to Jim Miles, who hosts the Texas company Walking Tours of Austin. They primarily do ghost tours and murder walk tours around Austin. We'll be chatting about the creepy side of Austin, talking ghosts and murders that have happened in this great city, so sit back and enjoy the podcast. All right, thanks for joining me, Jim. What's the weather like there in Austin? Are you an Austin boy, born and bred?
Not born and bred. I'm one of these Americans who wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as fast as I could.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's all right.
It's warm in Texas. It is probably 92 degrees right now at 8:57 p.m.
8:57 p.m. and that means it's 11:57 a.m. in Australia the next day. So I'm in the future and you're in the past.
Wow, you're blowing my mind right now.
I know, crazy, isn't it? So, so I actually found out about your walking tours of Austin, which is your business, isn't it?
Indeed. Yep. I'm the CEO and janitor of Walking Tours of Austin.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Well, yeah, I found out about your tour through my friend Karina, who I met in Seoul, Korea on a ghost tour. So I met her on a ghost tour, and I think she's interested in ghost tours and stuff. So shout out to Karina. But she put me on to you, and you were having a live ghost tour. It was half an hour of you talking and to the camera and then taking us around different parts of Austin, showing us the spooky side of Austin. But it was fantastic, mate.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you for tuning in. I remember you well. First of all, Karina, thank you. You're a great individual, spreading the word all over the world. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was bored to tears. Karina hit, COVID. Karina, you didn't hit.
Karina 19.
Karina, you're a perfect person, but COVID is not. It hit us really hard. And, of all the things that sucked about COVID, boredom was the biggest one for me. I'm a mover, Ben, like I love to move. I assume you're the same way, traveling guy. And so for us to be sedentary is like a fate worse than death. And there was another company in town that started bumping around with virtual tours. And I don't know, man, I just wasn't feeling that. I just, going out and then I love the concept, but I thought, man, what if we put all our eggs in one basket and we got on Facebook, we advertised it for 5 days, but rather than charging for this tour, like a normal tour, it's free. We just put it out there for free and we get to do a double win. We show downtown Austin abandoned and we get a chance to show off this great city, and the paranormal side of Austin is pretty amazing. So I'm glad you tuned in. I remember you well. I remember your comments. I was pretty nervous, dude. I didn't know if anyone was going to tune into that thing, but we had 1,600 plus, maybe, I think at the end it was over 2,000 views on that thing.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Dude, that sounded like you've done it all your life. It was really natural, Jim. Really good effort, mate.
I sure appreciate that. I love doing it. It was more fun than I thought it was going to be.
And that was completely live, wasn't it? There was no cuts. It was just you just walking around.
Nope, bro. It was 5, 4, 3, 2, boom, hit it, go. There was you might have seen, but someone got arrested on the tour. It wasn't me, thank God, but someone else
I didn't see that.
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. So,
oh, you mean in the background there was yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, it's just
that was funny as. Austin, it wasn't ever a city that I thought about visiting, but I think I really want to visit Austin now. It seems really interesting.
Well, I'd love to have you. It's amazing how many Aussies come to see us and feel almost a kindred spirit with Austin. Texas, I guess, is better put. But, just
sure.
It's just wide open country. We're pretty fierce people here and usually pretty kind and pretty gracious. So also we love stories, which I've found quite a bit of Aussies love a great story.
So considering you like telling stories, is that why you formed Walking Tours of Austin?
Yeah, yes, I would say, story is something that's hard to get out of you once it's in you. And I
Yeah.
tell people on my tours that I was blessed when I was a little boy to have a grandmother who fed me a steady diet of ghost stories growing up.
Oh, cool. Oh,
And
that's amazing.
Oh, bro, she was amazing. Her name was Rachel Anna. We called her Ray Ray lovingly, and
Oh.
she lived to be 99 years old. But
Wow.
she knew how to tell a story. She could arc a story, and she could. Oh my goodness, she could. Set the story to such an extent you felt like you were there. And of course, I'm 5, 6 years old. I'm terrified.
Yeah, sure.
And it was always a cold and rainy night, and it was
Oh,
all the grandkids gathered around. And for
oh,
me,
wow.
yeah, dude. So we would beg her to stop. I mean, she was so good that we would be so scared, I remember. And we'd say, "Stop, Ray Ray, stop, stop." She'd stop, long pause. And she'd say, "Okay." And then a few seconds later, we were all screaming, "Don't stop, don't stop." So one of these memories I have. And since I was a little boy, I've been fascinated with ghost stories. But I wonder how much of that is a love of the paranormal, which I do love stories of the paranormal, but also just a love of story in general, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, I'm the same. I've loved paranormal stuff ever since being a young child as well, watching horror flicks and so forth at my friend's house. I remember watching Friday the 13th when I was only probably 13.
Great film.
12. And
Yes.
Yeah, great film. And just, slasher films and so forth. Always been in that type of stuff, but also ghastly stuff as well. So I remember Ghostbusters, the first Ghostbusters, and that scene of the woman in the library.
Oh, yes.
That's still one of the scariest things that I've ever seen on TV or in a movie.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I am right there with you. When she turns and does the shh and the power of that. Oh, bro, I just got chills thinking about that scene. I was terrified. And then I'm a big Bill Murray fan, so for me, I thought, am I supposed to laugh? Is Stay Puft Marshmallow Man? And I'm terrified. It was a brilliant film for that reason. Another one that rocked my world was the original Poltergeist.
Oh, yes, that was freaky. Did you watch it as a younger guy as well?
Yeah, when I was a little boy, I lived in Minnesota, of all places, and we got HBO. I don't know if y'all have home box office. Do you remember that? That was a big deal.
Yeah, I remember it. HBO, but we didn't have it in Australia. But surely it still runs now. HBO, with great series.
Well, there was a while when it was the bomb. It was like if you got HBO, that was it, and you'd get this little tiny little guide, and it would have all the movies. Well, here's Spielberg's original Poltergeist. I'm maybe 9 years old.
Yeah,
and that movie ruined me, man. You'd watch the movies 1,000 times because they were free, and that's when I began to be terrified of clowns for sure and thunderstorms. Both. He did a great job in that movie.
Yeah, I absolutely did. Oh man, I could talk horror films all day. Maybe that's another thing we can do.
Yeah, call me back, bro. I'd love that.
I'll get you back on and we'll talk horror films. Because I even felt Predator was a bit of a horror because I'm still scared of Predator.
Yeah, Predator was great mix of kind of a war vibe, which is super tense, and Schwarzenegger's at his best, and aliens. Come on, man, it was beautiful. Oh gosh, I loved it.
Well, talking Schwarzenegger, aliens, and Predator, for the person that doesn't know much about Austin, can you give me a brief rundown on what Austin's like?
For sure. We got to switch gears to McConaughey, though. That's the only difference.
Yeah. Oh, he's the best.
Yeah, man, it's great. So Austin's a great little town, man. It's a little town of 1 million people. I say that because I've lived in a lot of cool places in my life. Austin's by far my favorite. It does feel like a small town because the University of Austin, UT Austin, is right downtown. So we've got this skyline that just bursts out of nowhere off of I-35. If you've ever driven in the States, down I-35 through Texas, you got Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, and then eventually you hit Houston. But Austin's a gem, man. It's great. We don't have any professional sports teams to speak of, not major ones, baseball, basketball in Austin, but we've got the Longhorns, and that's kind of makes us feel like almost like It's almost like a high school, like a hometown football team.
Yeah, absolutely.
But on the same token, it's big enough to be a really cool, progressive city. We are the Cap City, of course. So being the capital of Texas is really cool. That's, the Capitol building is gorgeous. Both the university and the Capitol keep us young because those are recession-proof jobs and they're always growing and
good.
always excellent. Yeah, especially now, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We've got great restaurants, man, great bars, great live music. I mean, we're the home of ACL every year. Austin City Limits is one of the greatest live music festivals in the world.
That would be amazing to go to.
You should come and check it out, man. It's perfect.
I definitely will.
Yeah.
Hey, what's a longhorn?
So good. All right. This is a good question. Longhorn it's cattle. Like these are cattle and they're specific.
Longhorn cattle.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So hook 'em horns, baby. Hook 'em horns. So they were Spanish animals originally and they mixed when the Anglos started moving west and they kind of mixed together. And then of course, Spain is kicked out of Mexico, but there's all these longhorn cattle and being Americans, we figured out how to make a lot of money off of it. So, during westward expansion, we had these huge herds of longhorn cattle, and men like Colonel Jesse Driscoll and others made a fortune in this area, driving the cattle from San Antonio through Austin up to Fort Worth, Texas. That was a railhead, and they took the cattle up there. Right? They'd put them on refrigerated cars, and then move them east to Chicago, where they were slaughtered, and that, of course, fed a massive growing population on the East Coast in the mid to late 19th century when, the Industrial Revolution is booming.
And is longhorn cattle tasty to eat?
I have no idea. I can't tell the difference between any kind of cattle. I love meat, so yeah, they're delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying the nightlife and eating and drinking and so forth in Austin's really good. I know Austin's a very old town, isn't it? Is it one of the oldest in Texas?
San Antonio is the oldest. And
San Antonio. Okay.
Yeah. So other than San Antonio, the whole state is a product of the railroad. So in American history, you have this push in the starting about the 1850s is this big migration to the West. We hit the pause button during the American Civil War, and it picks up again after the Civil War is over. And so you have these great cities in Texas, but their starting dates are very similar. For example, Houston is founded in 1837. That's the great city of Houston. And then Austin is 1839. Dallas is 1841. So in that respect, we're old, but if you compare us to the East Coast, to Charleston, we're very
it's
young.
much older, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
And what do you reckon are some of the best things for someone to see and do when they are in Austin?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's so great about Austin is since we are such a young city in many ways, our historic buildings are still here. They haven't gone anywhere. We don't have earthquakes here. And so we've just kind of been here. We're a little bit too far north to be hit by hurricanes and a little bit too far south for Tornado Alley and a little bit too far west to be invaded by Great Britain. So our buildings are pretty much unmolested. And the Driscoll Hotel is a great stop if you're in town for a few days. Really cool tavern in the Driscoll. It was built by that guy I was telling you about, by Colonel Jesse Driscoll, a cattle baron.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So he builds it in 1885 for $400,000. But that's some serious change back in the day. That's like 11 to 12 million bucks. I don't have a calculator in front of me, but yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah, I remember you said something about the Driscoll Hotel in one of your tours.
Of course. Yeah. The one you watched. We were right outside. It's capital H haunted, man. It's haunted. So, but that would be a double. That would be one I'd go to for sure. I'd visit the campus. I'd enjoy some of our nightlife and maybe check out Antone's for some live music, or just 6th Street in general is an experience altogether. A lot of live music, a lot of great bars, and Texas hospitality.
That sounds really nice. I can't wait to get to Austin now. I gotta put it on my bucket list once once all this COVID-19 stuff is all finished, all done and dusted. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon. Let's get at it.
But I see that you do like to explore the grisly side of Austin on your walks. So you do host the Murder Walk Austin and Ghost Tour. Can you recount to me one of the creepiest stories from one of the locations that you have visited?
For sure. Which tour in particular? You mean the Murder Tour?
The Murder Tour, yep.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Well, just the Murder Tour in general is very dark, right? I mean, I have to be very careful when people are showing up for the tour. You know, it's how you say, are you here for the Murder Tour? You know, you'll get some funny looks if they're not there for the tour. You catch my drift?
Because there's a couple of tours, isn't there?
Yeah. So I have a ghost tour and the murder tour, and I have to separate those at the scene, you know, when the tour starts. So yeah, it's really kind of a crazy story. I kind of like you have always been drawn to the darker side of history. And part of that is a bit of a fascination with serial killers, I guess, not specifically serial killers, but unsolved mysteries, you know, and
wow.
And the stories that lie just underneath the stories. Again, probably credit my grandmother for that. But, you know, in 1885, Austin had a horrible, horrible year. We have the first serial killer in American history is from Austin, Texas. And in that year, he killed 8 Austinites. 7 of those were women, 5 of those African-American servant girls. And he was never caught. And what puts him up there on the list, not only was he the first, about 6 years before H.H. Holmes ever killed anyone in Chicago. You can read more about that in The Devil in the White City. But our guy killed with an axe, a knife, and an ice pick, and absolutely terrorized Austin, Texas for 1 calendar year. You know, he started killing just about New Year's Eve, 1884, and his last horrendous event was Christmas Eve, 1885, a double murder. 2 Caucasian women, Austin socialites, killed them 40 minutes apart on Christmas Eve, mate. Can you imagine that? Christmas Eve was canceled in Austin that year.
Whoa. That's scary.
Yeah, it's terrifying, man. So like the scariest thing that's ever happened on the tour is, man, it's so hard to explain. The whole tour is really charged with emotion, drama, it's storytelling. I try to lighten the mood whenever I can. I don't know. Have you ever been on a true crime tour before?
I haven't. So that's one thing I still need to do. I've only really gone on ghost tours, so that's probably the limit for me. Although I would definitely do a true crime tour if there was one available. There's
a special thing that happens, Ben, where you're touring and you're going to any great. I think mine's a great tour. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. But one of the things that makes it great is we go to the exact spots. I've gone through great pains and research to get as close as I can. I'm talking within 25 yards of the exact spot where these women were killed. And there's just a certain feeling in your stomach. There's a certain weight, a gravity to that situation. When sometimes I'm telling the story, man, I swear I can almost feel the presence of that monster who terrorized Austin. You're telling the story, and half of you is just wishing you could be back in time to stop it. You know, these women were innocent, and you know what's about to happen. So as you describe the scene, you should see the look in the eyes of my guests. I mean, like they're there, man. They are there, and it is a terrifying feeling. And then, of course, I show the firsthand reports of the newspapers, and we show pictures of the detectives at the time. And, you know, it just gets so deep that sometimes it's not quite smothering, but boy, you can feel it. You can feel the tension that happened in Austin in 1885.
Is it ever too much for some people that are on the tour?
It has happened to me before where I've had a woman had bailed out of the tour after my almost out after my introduction. I explained what happened, and I always tell people, look, you signed up for a murder tour and I'm not pulling any punches, you know, so fair warning. And I told you tell the story of Molly Smith, the poor woman, 21 years old. She's hacked to death with an axe, carved up. She She was gutted like a calf, the Austin Statesman, our newspaper said, and she was lobotomized with an ice pick through her right temple. Well, I'm telling the story, and I'm looking at this woman's face, and I know I'm losing her, man. I mean, I'm losing her. There's no doubt.
She's out the door.
She's gone, and she's
gone. She's down the road.
She's gone. And the best part is she tipped me before she left. She was only on the tour for 15 minutes, so that was great.
She tipped you because she wanted you to stop.
She's like, please stop. Here's $5.
Please stop. So the reason why I do mention Murder Walk Austin, I know you got a ghost tour as well, is because I watched the Murder Walk live thing. It was on your website.
Sweet.
Walking Tours of Austin website. It was really, really good. So I know the stories that you just told me. I actually know it because it goes for about 54 minutes. It's fantastic as you walking around Austin, going to the certain locations. That's really well done, bud. And I just love the history of the gruesome murders that have taken place there. So I don't want to spoil anything, but I think everyone or anyone that's listening to the episode today should go to the website, Walking Tours of Austin website, which I will leave a link somewhere. So I don't want to spoil too much because the documentary film was awesome. I paid, I think it was $14 Australian, but it really felt like money well spent. So all that information, though, is public information, isn't it?
For sure. Yeah. We'll post something, whatever you need to put that up is great.
Yep.
But that was a product of me being bored to tears during COVID. And I've always had a burning desire to tell that story, to honor those women, but do it in a professional way. So thank you for your compliments. Really, I did take a lot of time on it, and it's thoroughly researched. It's, I have a promo code on it that you can post to. It's promo code SLASHED, which I know that's kind of gratuitous. That'll save you $2.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. I think it's like $7 American, 7 or 9, something like that.
Yeah, that's about right. I think it's about 7. But yeah, it was really interesting because the person you're talking about is the Servant Girl Annihilator of Austin, Texas. And that was jaw-dropping ending, buddy. That link that I don't want to say anything was because I want people to watch the film. But the link between the Servant Girl Annihilator of Austin and that other pretty well-known guy is pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing, and I too will not spoil the ending, but that theory that you're talking about is trending, my friend. It's trending.
Is it trending now? Because I did research. I bloody went online for about half an hour to an hour later doing my own research going, Jesus, what have I just found out? Am I a super sleuth?
Yeah, you need to come up to Texas and we'll go into business together.
What, 2 cops? Who would be the good one? Who would be the bad one?
Oh, wow. I love it.
Thank you, sir. So I'm as you can tell, huge fan of Ghost Walks, Jim. You've always actually telling you, what am I saying? So, hold on.
Sure.
I'm thinking of Ray Ray.
Ray Ray. God, you would have loved Ray Ray.
I know. Because this question relates to why you're so interested in ghosts and the supernatural. But I know why. It's because of Ray Ray.
A lot of it has to do with that, man.
Yeah, I can tell. So is that totally what it was? Because of your lovely grandmother telling you all those super scary stories? You just, wanted to take it into tours?
I think what it was is she introduced me to the love of storytelling and the impact that story can have. So yes, there was an interesting ghost stories from Ray Ray for sure. But what she opened me up to at a very young age is the power of story. I realized when I got older what was going on in those stories, and it was much more than people sitting around hearing a tale. Hearts are knit together. People are traveling in the same direction, but also on their own journey at the same time. Story is immensely powerful. And I fell in love with story when I was a little boy. It just so happens that the greatest stories are the grisliest. I think that just worked itself out, and well, that's not always the case, right? But you get my point. And so, as far as ghost, being drawn toward the darker side of history, that's just always been there, man. I have a master's degree in Southern history, and I wrote.
Oh, cool.
I went to school in the University of Charleston, better known as the College of Charleston here in the States. But I wrote a master's thesis on prisoners of war who were held in Charleston during the Civil War, and because of the subject matter, I uncovered many copies of firsthand accounts of prisons and prisoners and crime and punishment. And that led to unsolved mysteries. And in Charleston's a unique city in America because it's one of these ancient cities, live oak trees and dripping Spanish moss and cobblestone alleyways. You get the
that sounds amazing.
Oh man, it's Edgar Allan Poe meets the Civil War.
I love Edgar Allan Poe.
It's off the chain. I mean, the graveyards are right in among these old houses. So this is the backdrop of where I'm learning history. And then I did this master's thesis on prisons, and I was hooked, man. I was true crime before true crime was cool. I'm telling you.
Do you know a lot about the Underground Railroad?
Well, I do know that it ran in through the Southeast. We're talking Harriet Tubman and the whole deal. It was very active, and at the end of the day, the Underground Railroad was a connection of safe houses, is what it was, and it took a network of like-minded people. So it was often people harboring fugitive slaves at risk to their own liberty, sometimes their own life. Because, these slave owners are rushing after their slaves. So they're hiding them, they're stashing them, and they're leading them north to freedom. It's a great American story of freedom. Yeah. And it ran right through Charleston for sure. And many of the southern states.
Yeah, that's cool. I always thought it was, some underground metro system.
Me too. When I was little, I was very, very disappointed to find out there wasn't an actual train underground. I felt really ripped off. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was the only bloody douche that thought, it was an underground railroad. But then, it's not at all. It's just a name.
Yeah, I mean, have a little bit more, you have to have a little more responsibility when naming something, people. That's what I say.
Yeah. You shouldn't have called it the Underground Railroad. You should have called it something more interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Something that related to the bloody topic.
Exactly. Right.
So, with your tours, you got the ghost tour, the murder walks tour. Is there any places on your tour that you wouldn't take people? Maybe restricted sites or a place that doesn't feel right in your gut?
Yeah. So let's see. For safety reasons, Austin is mostly a very safe city, but 6th Street does get a little spicy, if you catch my drift, especially late at night. And my ghost tour leaves at 8, so it can be getting on 9:30 and on a weekend night. So I don't go very deep down 6th Street. 6th Street runs east-west in Austin because it just it can get a little. The further you go east toward the interstate, for the safety of people, I don't take people down there. But as far as I think the context of your question is, are there places that are so creeped out, so weird that I just don't feel it's too much to take people? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. I mean, also, I guess somewhere where you may get in trouble, if you've got a group of people and you thought, I might enter this building or something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I'm very respectful of the Driscoll Hotel because it's a working hotel. So I don't take groups, no more than 10 people at a time go into the Driscoll with me. So what I'll have is sometimes a wingman guide who will entertain my guests as I take in 10 people. And we'll talk about the ghost story, for example, of Samantha Houston. It's an iconic, current, and active ghost story in the Driscoll. And then I'll come back out and I'll collect the next 10, if that makes sense. So that is one place I would never go into with a gaggle because, there's something very intimate about a ghost story too, isn't there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
you can't have a microphone. I don't want to be amplified on a tour. It just ruins it for me. So I want to have us in COVID's kind of ruined it for me. Of social distancing sucks for ghost stories. But yeah, so there's that. And on the murder tour, I'd have to add many of these these sites where the servant girls were killed, they're gone. They're long gone. Those servant quarters are gone. So they're working established restaurants and bars and salons and things of this nature. So there are times that I will maybe go a block away from where it happened because, the people who own the place maybe aren't aware that Eliza Shelley was slaughtered in their kitchen back in 1885. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, so I try to be respectful of that. Other than that, man, no, the more haunted, the better. Like the creepiest places that I go to, sometimes one is a parking garage that's here in Austin. And it's at top of 8th and Guadalupe. And that's where Eula Phillips lived. And she was massacred around 1:30 in the morning on Christmas Eve, 1885, the final victim of the servant girl annihilator. And that one always has a huge impact and leaves me with that. I don't know about you, but I always get when I visit an abandoned place, right? A place that I know something significant happened here, but maybe other people don't know. I get almost a nervous feeling in my stomach. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, there was a terrible murder in my suburb probably maybe a year ago or a year and a half ago, and it was by a bunch of bushes that I would frequent often. I would drive past there all the time, and it's stopped now, but for a long while, every time I drove past there, I'd always just have this real sick feeling in my gut.
Yes.
It's just, I wouldn't think that would ever happen in my suburb, where I live in Melbourne. I live in a pretty safe suburb. But yeah, this girl was she was watched, she was stalked, she got off the tram, and then, she got followed. She was an international student because I live in a suburb with 2 universities or colleges.
Right.
Yeah, she was just taken into the bushes. I think she was raped and murdered.
Oh, Lord.
And, some other things done to her. But you would have never thought that would happen in the open the way it did at around 8 p.m. or something like that. Or maybe it was a bit later. It's crazy. But, yeah, it always made me feel like crap.
Well, yeah, Ben. I mean, I relate that. I relate to that, and that's what I'm saying for this spot in this particular parking garage. One of the things that's fascinating about it is as I'm on that ground and with GPS location, you can get yourself, like I said, to within 25 yards, maybe even closer. You know exactly where it happened. And you have the newspaper accounts. So I know, for example, that Jimmy Phillips was knocked out in bed, head bashed open. He was bleeding everywhere. Eula was nowhere to be found because she'd been dragged to the backyard. Their tiny baby was in bed, old enough to sit up, just crisscross applesauce, crimson in blood, holding an apple. I mean, this was reported in the newspaper, and no idea, unaware that his mother is dead. And then as we stand and I'm describing the scene, reading the firsthand account, you're looking at houses all around that still stand in Austin. Her neighbors' houses are still there. They survived. So you look at those windows of people that they looked out that night. They looked out and saw the chaos. They realized that hell had broken loose on the streets of Austin. When I'm in that parking garage telling that story on almost any given night I'm doing the murder story, I swear to you, Ben, I feel like it could have been my loved one who was killed. That's almost how strong I feel it. It's really weird.
No, I totally get that. Hey, I just thought of a question.
Yeah, go.
How do you differentiate between a ghost walk and a murder walk when both of them probably incorporate death? That probably doesn't make sense, no?
No, it does. Well, that's why they're both attractive tours, because at the end of the day, humans are we're attracted to death. That's why death sells in advertising. It's why it sells everything. We're all drawn to it. It's the inevitable thing that's coming. And the more we know about it, it's kind of like, it's really super creepy. It's like, you want to run away from it, yet you want to get near it at the same time because you want to know about it, right? We want to know as much as we can. And ghost tours are that way, right? Because ultimately there's only one common denominator in any ghost story.
Yeah, true.
That somebody died. And that's that. The difference is those are all over the map. You've got poltergeists and hauntings, and you've got all kinds of, different stories. Also, they jump all over in years, right? So some date back to the earliest days of Austin. One story I tell on my tour is as early as 1991, with sightings as early as just a few weeks ago. And so,
what? Whoa.
Yeah, man. Yes. And then there's that whole world, but a murder tour, and maybe one of the reasons I like giving, well, I can't say that. I love giving both of the tours. But the historian in me loves the Murder Walk Austin tour, because now you're dealing with even a closer connection. So the difference between the two, in my mind, is at the end of the day, it's impossible to prove a ghost story. It's just impossible to prove it. I can't call up the ghost and have them and interview them and all that stuff. Now, I can get a lot of circumstantial evidence, and I can probably make you believe straight up that these things happen, as I do. But with the murder tour, I can take you straight to the police diaries, the police logs of 1885, and show you what happened. It's real life terror. It's the essence of true crime, and it's in many ways is far more terrifying than any ghost story.
Wow. And you have all the documents and photographs with you while you're telling the story. Yeah.
The things you saw in the video?
Yeah.
Many of those I have images of, and I show them in real time. And
that's cool.
Yeah. It's a real unique experience. I would encourage anyone listening, if they're ever in Austin, to look up yes, I want you to buy the virtual murder tour. Please do. Yay for you if you do. But if you're ever in Austin, take the tour. You will love it. You'll love it.
No, definitely buy the video, because it's just a really well made little mini documentary. Just definitely get that. Hey Jim, we've talked a bit about the Driscoll Hotel, but we haven't really explained much about why it has such a horrid past. Maybe can we go into that a little bit?
I'd love to. So I've talked to you a little bit about this great man, Colonel Jesse Driscoll. He made his fortune in Longhorn cattle. And when the cattle drives began to come to an end in the mid-1880s, he switches gears to real estate. For $7,500, he buys this block, literally bought a block in downtown Austin. And he, in his own words, set his mind to building the finest hotel west of St. Louis, Missouri. That was his goal. So he invests $400,000, builds this gorgeous Gilded Age hotel. It's a technological marvel, Ben. It's got working elevators, attached bathrooms on the top floor. It's like,
oh, cool.
It's unbelievable. It looks like a hotel you'd see at the time in Philadelphia or Boston or New York. But he built it in the middle of a cow town in the middle of Texas. This is crazy. So he did it because he believed in Austin, and he believed we would be the next San Francisco. But like any haunted hotel, it got off to a rocky start. He finally opens. Oh, don't forget this. He's building the hotel in 1885. And you know what else was going on in 1885?
Ooh,
yeah.
Yeah. So Annihilator.
Yeah, man. Women are dropping dead on a weekly basis. Poor Driscoll. God. I think of this guy sometimes as an entrepreneur. I mean, the two things we need for a successful business is a thriving economy and a safe city. He had neither.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So that's maybe the first check. And then, he opens the hotel to great parties and fanfare and all of this great newspaper coverage in 1886. Only when he opens it, Texas is in the midst of a horrible recession. There was a terrible drought in the state. So, it only cost $5 a night to stay at the Driscoll back in 1886, but that was about $120 or whatever.
That's expensive.
Yeah. So people didn't have that kind of money. They didn't have the discretionary income. So the hotel opens flat, and that's depressed. It kind of depresses Driscoll. It's not getting off to this great start that he'd hoped. And then this is a true story. It's hard to believe, but Driscoll is a prolific gambler, and he one night, maybe in an effort to infuse money into the hotel, but he gets into a high stakes game of poker, and he bets the deed to the hotel.
Oh no, he doesn't.
Yes, he does. Yes,
silly man.
In one hand of poker, my friend, and he loses it to his brother-in-law of all things. And so he loses.
That's not too bad.
Yeah. He loses it in 1888, only 2 years after opening the hotel. And then, Driscoll never really recovers from this, honestly. Whatever biography you read, that was a big deal. And he ends up dying of what the records say. He dies of a broken heart in the year 1890. And, probably a stroke between me and you. Like, that's probably
yeah.
But at the time they used to write that, right? It makes it sound much more beautiful. And
it wasn't COVID-19.
No, it wasn't COVID.
No,
they had much worse viruses to worry about back then, I have a feeling.
Yeah.
So the dude dies, right? And now you've got like what seems to be not an avalanche, but a series of weird things. Like the hotel just isn't flourishing. It's still in a cow town, and it's like this tension of this 5-star hotel. And one night you'll have, a dignitary stay at the hotel, and the next night 2 drunks rolling off of 6th Street and getting a gunfight in the main lobby. It's like this crazy tension. So that is the background to the Driscoll. And also early on in its beginning, a terrible accident happened at the Driscoll Hotel. And so now, do you want me to get into this story, or what do you want me to do right now?
I hope you enjoyed part 1 of the podcast with Jim Miles. I'll be back again in a couple of weeks for part 2 of Jim Miles' conversation, when we talk about a couple of really spooky ghost stories. So I can't wait for you to hear that. So I'll hear from you, or I'll see you in a couple of weeks, and you know what to do. Like Travelman Podcast wherever you can. Look at the Facebook page, the Facebook group, join them. Get on Instagram, get on Twitter, get on everything else. Sign up. Who signs up for stuff these days? But anyway, you know what I mean. Just get on social media and like and love Travelman Podcast, because I love Travelman Podcast. See you guys. Bye.